How could I have known that a single moment would unravel the fabric of my life? It was an unremarkable morning in Willow Springs, Maine, where the pine trees stood sentinel under a pale summer sky, their needles whispering secrets to the salt-tinged breeze. I, Evelyn, 45, stood in my quiet Victorian home, the weight of routine pressing gently against my chest, a familiar ache I'd learned to carry. My life with Thomas, my husband, was a steady rhythm, comfortable, yet hollowed by years of unspoken distance, a marriage that had settled into polite coexistence. He was at work, the house cloaked in a silence that felt both soothing and oppressive, a canvas for my restless thoughts. I was no stranger to solitude, but today, a flicker of longing stirred within me, a yearning for something I couldn't name. Upstairs, Caleb, our 24-year-old tenant and the son of my dearest friend, Margaret, was in his room, a presence that had quietly woven itself into my daily musings, stirring emotions I dared not examine too closely. I decided to offer Caleb a coffee, a simple act to pierce the monotony, perhaps to spark a fleeting connection that might ease the quiet in my heart. As I ascended the creaky maple stairs, faint sounds drifted from his room, soft, rhythmic, like a movie playing low. I smiled, picturing him engrossed in some high-octane thriller, his youthful energy a stark contrast to my measured existence. His door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the dim hallway, inviting yet tinged with hesitation. I paused, my hand poised to knock, but curiosity tugged at me, urging me closer. I peered inside, expecting an innocent scene, but what I saw stopped my breath. Caleb sat on his bed, his laptop casting a pale glow across his face, his hands moving with a purpose that sent a chill through me. At first my mind grasped for an explanation, a game, a dramatic film, but as my eyes adjusted, the truth crashed over me like a cold wave. The screen's reflection revealed something intensely private, something I was never meant to witness. My blood turned to ice, shame and shock colliding in my chest, a revelation that shattered the moment's innocence and left me reeling. Caleb fumbled, his face flushing scarlet as he scrambled to mute the laptop, the sound fading but the weight of the moment lingering. Heavy and unyielding, our eyes met, his wide with mortification, mine caught in a storm of horror and an inexplicable warmth I couldn't comprehend. "I'm so sorry," he stammered, his voice thick with embarrassment, his gaze darting away. I stood frozen, words failing me, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "The door, I didn't mean," I started, my voice trembling, but the sentence dissolved into the air, leaving only the echo of my guilt. A strange heat spread through me, a mix of embarrassment and thoughts I couldn't grasp, racing too fast to hold. I stepped back, retreating to the hallway, my hands pressed to my burning cheeks, my breath uneven. "What just happened?" I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible. Why hadn't I knocked? Why had I lingered? The fault was mine, yet a part of me wondered if I was alone in this moment's pull. At 45, I knew the sting of shame, a lifelong shadow, but this was uncharted, a raw, disorienting territory that left me trembling with both fear and a quiet, forbidden thrill. I stood paralyzed in the hallway, running my fingers through my hair, desperate to quell the chaos within. Caleb appeared in the doorway, adjusting his shirt, his throat clearing softly, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice wavering but earnest. "I thought the door was shut." I shook my head, my gaze darting away, unable to meet his. "No, I should have knocked. I'm the one who's sorry," I said, the words tumbling out, hurried and uncertain. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive, thick with a tension we'd never acknowledged, a new awareness that pulsed between us. We'd shared this house for years, yet this was the first time our presence felt so charged. The first time I saw Caleb not as Margaret's son, but as a man whose nearness stirred something deep within me. Guilt, curiosity, a quiet yearning I couldn't name. "I should start dinner," I said, turning toward the stairs, my voice unsteady but resolute, a desperate bid to reclaim normalcy. Caleb said nothing, but I felt his eyes on me, searching, as if trying to unravel a truth neither of us could voice. To my incredible subscribers, thank you for being the heartbeat of this story. If you're new, hit subscribe and join our family, where we explore the heart's quiet truths. That evening, we avoided each other. No words, no glances, just a silence that spoke of irrevocable change. At dinner, Thomas's absence left Caleb and me at the oak table, our eyes fixed on our plates, the clink of silverware a stark reminder of the unspoken rift between us. The air was heavy with what we couldn't say, a truth we both felt but couldn't confront, a shared secret that bound us even as it pushed us apart. Days passed, each cloaked in a veneer of normalcy, but beneath the surface, everything had shifted. Our silence deepened, a chasm growing where ease once lived. Yet it carried an intimacy, a connection forged in that fleeting, forbidden moment. One afternoon, Caleb sat beside me on the living room couch, his hesitation palpable, his brown eyes flickering with resolve. "Evelyn, about the other day," he began, his voice trembling but sincere. "I'm so embarrassed. I never wanted that to happen. I hope it doesn't ruin things between us." His vulnerability pierced me, a wave of empathy softening my guard. I inhaled deeply, forcing a smile to ease his tension, though my heart raced with my own unease. "Caleb, trust me, I've had my share of awkward moments," I said, sharing lighthearted tales of my own missteps, spilling coffee at a meeting, tripping at a friend's wedding, watching his smile soften, his shoulders relax. For a moment, it felt like the tension had lifted, like we'd reclaimed a piece of our old ease. But deep within, I knew nothing was resolved. That conversation hadn't mended the rift. It had erased the boundaries that once defined us, leaving us in a new, uncharted space where emotions simmered, raw and unspoken just beneath the surface. Caleb chuckled softly, his gaze dropping to the table, his fingers tracing the grain of the wood. "Guess we're even now," he said, his voice quiet but weighted with meaning. I tilted my head, curiosity sparking, a gentle probe in my tone. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart quickening. His expression shifted, a flicker of realization crossing his face, as if he'd spoken something he hadn't meant to reveal. He rubbed the back of his neck, hesitating, but the moment's momentum carried him forward. "I've noticed you too," he muttered, his eyes averted, his cheeks flushing. "You didn't know." The words hit me like a current, electric and disorienting, freezing me in place. "What?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, a warmth spreading through me. Fear, curiosity, a forbidden thrill I couldn't ignore. He pressed on, his voice low, raw. "I never said anything because I was too ashamed. It's been my secret, something I couldn't let go." His confession shattered every wall between us, a truth that felt both dangerous and exhilarating, a revelation that mirrored my own buried emotions. Our eyes met, an unspoken understanding passing between us, a moment that thickened the air with possibility. From that day, nothing was the same. The distance we'd once kept crumbled, replaced by small, charged moments, conversations that lingered too long in the kitchen, laughter that felt too intimate over shared stories. We watched movies together, a stark contrast to our former detachment, our arms brushing on the couch, our fingers grazing as we reached for the remote, each touch sending a shiver through me. I tried to suppress it, telling myself it was nothing, but the emotions, guilt, longing, a quiet joy, grew louder, insistent. One evening, sleep eluded me, my mind consumed by Caleb, by the pull I couldn't escape. I knew this couldn't continue. I needed to set boundaries, to confront whatever this was and end it before it consumed us. With resolve, I rose, my heart pounding, and found myself at his door, slightly ajar, a dim light casting shadows across the floor. I stepped inside, my breath catching as I saw him asleep, his face peaceful, his chest rising and falling in quiet rhythm. The sight stirred a tempest within me. Tenderness, fear, a yearning I couldn't name, a whirlwind that held me captive. I knew I should leave, but I lingered, grappling with the emotions that pinned me to this moment, a silent confession of how deeply I felt his presence. Finally, I retreated, returning to my room, But the night had changed me, leaving me raw, exposed, unable to deny the spark within. Days blurred, the boundaries fading further, each moment drawing us closer in a fragile, unspoken dance. I didn't notice when the line vanished, but the truth was clear. Turning back was impossible. Then one night, Caleb stumbled home, his steps unsteady, his breath heavy with alcohol. The door creaked loudly, a vase tipping over, the noise that threatened to wake Thomas. I rushed from my room, my nightgown askew, my heart racing with urgency to keep the peace. Caleb's eyes were unfocused, a faint smile on his lips, his presence both vulnerable and disarming. "Evelyn, are you really here?" he mumbled, his words slurring but laced with a warmth that tugged at my heart. I gripped his arm, steadying him, my voice low and urgent. "Caleb, shh. You can't go upstairs like this. We need to be quiet." His gaze lingered on me, soft and searching, a smile curving his lips. "You're so beautiful," he said, his voice sincere despite the haze. "Have I always missed this?" I froze, his words igniting a spark I couldn't quell, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the task. "Enough, Caleb. Let's get you some coffee." In the kitchen, I busied myself with the coffee maker, the air thick with unspoken tension, my hands trembling as I poured. Caleb sat, his gaze heavy on me, stirring emotions I fought to contain: guilt, longing, a quiet thrill that refused to fade. A mug slipped from his hand, coffee spilling across the counter, a small chaos that mirrored my inner storm. "Oh, Caleb," I murmured, grabbing a towel, my voice soft but tinged with exasperation. He smiled, unperturbed, his eyes warm. "You're always so kind," he said, his words a quiet confession that pierced me. I hurried to clean, aware of Thomas sleeping above, the need to keep this moment contained pressing against me. "We need to get you upstairs," but quietly, I said, looping my arm through his, guiding him to his room. His steps unsteady, his presence overwhelming. In his room, Caleb's movements grew clumsier, his shirt rumpled, and when he struggled to unbutton it, I reached out instinctively, my fingers brushing the fabric, a gesture born of care but heavy with consequence. The air shifted, Caleb's breath slowing, our eyes meeting in a moment that felt like a precipice. The silence was deafening, pressing against my chest, amplifying every heartbeat, every unspoken truth. Caleb paused, his hands dropping, his gaze locking onto mine, clear despite his intoxication. "I'm done pretending, Evelyn," he said, his voice soft but resolute, cutting through the haze. My heart raced, fear and longing colliding in a storm I couldn't escape. "What are you saying?" I whispered, my voice trembling, my resolve wavering. He stepped closer, the space between us crackling with intensity. "You feel it too," he said, his eyes searching mine, unmasking a truth I'd buried. "I know it keeps you awake." His words struck deep, a shiver running through me, his voice stripping away every pretense. "Caleb, this isn't right," I said, my voice faltering, but my feet stayed rooted, betraying my words, a silent admission of my own longing. He smiled, a knowing look that held no judgment, only truth. "Stop fighting it," he urged, his voice low, pulling me into a moment I couldn't escape. We stood there, inches apart, the tension a living thing, until an awkward pause broke the spell. I stepped back, my cheeks burning, embarrassment flooding me, a wave of clarity cutting through the haze. "We need space," I whispered, my voice barely audible, my heart heavy with the weight of what we'd almost crossed. "You're right, Caleb. No more games." I helped him into bed, tucking him in, my hands trembling as I closed his door, the act a quiet vow to reclaim control. In the shower, water cascaded over me, but it couldn't wash away the emotions that clung: guilt, desire, a quiet clarity that settled as the steam rose, a recognition that this moment had changed me irrevocably. I returned to bed, slipping into a restless sleep, but beneath the calm, a storm brewed, a longing I couldn't silence, a truth that pulsed with every heartbeat. This was no simple moment. It was the beginning of a shift that would unravel everything. Thomas would soon sense the change. his quiet intuition piercing the facade we'd built. Margaret, too, would notice. Her trust in me, a bond forged over decades, tested by the unspoken truth. This story isn't over. Far from it. The tides of fate are shifting, and the truth will surface, raw and unforgiving, a reckoning we cannot avoid.
Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts, like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more.